Hello, I'm Christy. Welcome back to our kitchen at Riley Family Farm. Today we're going to make chicken and sausage gumbo my way. I am not an expert on gumbo and I make no claims that this is an absolutely authentic gumbo, but this is the way that I do it. We love it. Our friends and family love it, and we hope you love it too. We're going to start with our Riley Family Farms chicken and some andouille from Home Place Pastures. As you can see, I've already prepared our chicken. This is where I probably differ a little bit from most gumbo recipes. I prepare a whole chicken ahead of time. I will either bake a chicken or run it through the crock pot or the Instapot. Today, we put it in the Instapot. We coated it with Tony Chachere's and put it in the Instapot with a little bit of apple juice in the bottom. And we've got all our vegetables prepared. We've got our andouille cut up, and we are going to move to the stove and get this put together. The first thing I'm going to do is brown this sausage and set it aside. I like to brown it to render out some of the fat, lock in some of the flavor, and it gives me a base of pan drippings to start with. Now that all our ingredients are prepped and set aside, let's make a roux. Roux is made with equal parts flour and fat. I prefer half butter and half oil, even though butter does have a lower smoke point and has to be watched closer. I'm using a cup of oil and a cup of butter, which is a lot of fat, but this is being stretched over 2 gallons of gumbo. I'm doubling the recipe that I'll be sharing with you below to feed a crowd. Now grab your beverage of choice because we're about to spend some quality time with this roux. Now that our butter is melted, I'm going to slowly add this flour and whisk it in over medium-low heat. Just depends on your stove. Mine is more towards the low end of things, and also because remember we're using butter, it has a lower smoke point and will burn faster. So I tend to go a little bit lower and take a little more time with my roux. I like to use butter because I think it gives an added richness to the roux, but whether you use half butter, or all oil, you're going to settle in and spend some time with this roux. A good roux can't be rushed or neglected. You need to stir constantly to keep your flour from burning. I usually spend about 30 minutes with my roux. Roux with butter is also not going to get as dark as a roux with just oil, so we're looking for about a peanut butter color. It will continue to brown after we add the vegetables. We're going to add our bell pepper, celery, and onion and continue to stir constantly until our vegetables start to soften. You'll notice that our roux also continues to brown. This is going to be pretty thick. Just keep on stirring while your vegetables cook. This is really smelling amazing. Our roux is going to continue darkening here until we end up with a nice milk chocolate color. Now we're going to stir in this super flavorful Home Place Pastures andouille that we browned and set aside earlier. Now we're going to add our tomatoes. Tomatoes are completely optional. Sometimes I add them and sometimes I do not. I have just run out of tomatoes from my garden last year, so I had to grab a can from the grocery store. This is what the grocery store calls chopped tomatoes. I would call this pureed tomatoes, and it would not be my first choice for gumbo. I think what we were looking for was diced tomatoes. In the end, it still tasted fabulous. And now the chicken broth. My broth didn't warm all the way, and you can still see it has some of the gel from our collagen-rich Riley Family Farms bone broth. I'll post the video below where we made pastured chicken bone broth. It's definitely worth the effort. Bay leaves, fresh or dried. Cavenders Greek seasoning. A little more Cavenders Greek seasoning because it is so good. Tony Chachere's Cajun seasoning. Cavenders and Tony Chachere's can be a little salty, so salt and pepper to taste at this point. And a few splashes of hot sauce. Simmer over medium-low heat for an hour. Last but definitely not least is our Riley Family Farms chicken that we prepared and shredded earlier. We're going to let this simmer for another 30 minutes while we get the rice going. Looks and smells wonderful. Let's plate this up and feed it to our visiting newlyweds.
Oh, I haven't had this in ages.
Delicious.